In this video, we're going to learn how to write a C program that can create directories on our file system by using the mkdir function defined in the POSIX library. The first thing we'll do is include the relevant library. So we'll include sys/stat.h. And to call the function is reasonably simple. We can just say mkdir test1. So the first argument is the name of the directory to create. And the second argument is the mode with which the directory is going to be created in terms of the file permissions. So who can do what with the directory. And we'll say 0777 to start with, because we can express the permissions using the same style of argument as we do when using the change mode command on the command line. So we'll compile our program and give it a try. We'll say gcc-o d.c, and right now in our directory, all we have is the source file and the executable. If we run the program, afterwards we'll find that we now have a test1 directory. So that's it. It's that simple to create the directory. Now there's some things we should know though. It's possible that maybe we can't create the directory. Maybe it already exists. The function mkdir is going to return -1 if there's a problem. So we can check for that. We could say if mkdir returns -1, we'll printf error creating directory \n. And we'll also return 1 to exit the program with an error status, as opposed to returning 0, which is a signal that everything's okay. So we'll save this and we'll give it a try. We'll recompile the program, and now after we run it, we get error creating dir. And that's because the test1 directory already exists. We can actually use the perr function to report the exact error that occurred. We'll include the errno.h library, because that's where the perr function is defined. And then here we'll say perr error. And what perr is going to do is report the error with error prepended to the front of the error. So we'll save this, compile the program, and run it. And now we get error : file exists. So we're getting more specific detail about what's actually going wrong. So that's fine if all we need to do is report what's gone wrong. But we may want our program to do something programmatically in response to an error occurring, depending on the error that's occurred. Like for example, if the file directory already exists, we might want to actually create a different directory instead of the one we tried to create. We would want to write some kind of code that could detect that situation and then handle it appropriately. To do that, we'll look at the error code. The error code we can get access to by using the global variable errno that's first defined in this library here. So we'll say extern int errno. And then what we'll do is look at the error code that's going to be stored in errno after running this function, and it returns an error. Now there's a number of preset error codes that it could be. I'll post a link to this documentation here. But for example, if we want to check if the file name already exists, we would check for the error code EEXIST, and that's a constant value that we can use when checking. So what we'll do is check the value of errno, and we'll say if errno is equal to EEXIST, then we know specifically what's gone wrong, and we could do something here. So we'll say printf do something \n for a new line, and we'll save this, recompile our program, and run it, and now we get do something, because we've detected exactly which type of error has occurred. And that do something could be create a directory different from this directory. So we could say, okay, we can't create a directory called test1. Let's try to create a directory called test2 here instead. So if we do compile the program and run it, we find that we still get the error reported that the file directory exists. But we also notice that test2 directory has been created. So we could write code to handle these different error cases programmatically, maybe a switch statement. to look at each possible error and to handle it however we want to handle that error. Now, another thing we get is these constants for defining the permission bits. In other words, the file directory access permissions. So for example, if we want to give the owner of the file read, write, and execution permissions, we can use this constant here. So we'll copy this, and in our program, instead of 0777, we'll use this constant here. Now I don't want an error this time, so I'm going to change it to test3. And we'll try this out. So we compile the program, we run it, and now we get directory test3. We can actually combine these permissions by using a bitwise OR operation. So what we'll do is give not just the owner read, write, execute permissions. We'll also give read, write, execute permissions to the group owner by saying bitwise OR and then dropping in that constant as well. And we'll do one more thing. We'll give read, write, and execute permissions to other users as well, using this constant here. So we'll copy this in. We'll paste it here. After a bitwise OR, we'll save this. And these permissions right here are the equivalent to what we had before, the 0777 permissions. So I'll say test4 here for the directory. We'll compile the program. We'll run it. And now we have a directory test4. And if I do ls-l here, and we look at the file permissions, we're going to find that that test1 directory that we created using mode 0777 has the same file permissions as directory test4 that we created using this technique here. So you'll want to go through this documentation here to figure out which permissions you need to give. The permissions we gave here are fairly permissive. We're basically letting everyone do everything. In general, it's better if you let only the people that need to do only what they need to with directories. Now the POSIX library is not part of the C standard library, so depending on your setup, you may not actually have access to the mkdir function. On some Windows setups, for example, you may not have access. So I'll also post a link to the Microsoft documentation of their equivalent mkdir function. So that's how we can use the mkdir POSIX library function to create a directory from our C program. Check out portfoliocourses.com, where we'll help you build a portfolio that will impress employers, including courses to help you develop C programming projects.